Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 16 and compare it against the iPhone SE first generation and see how both of these iPhones kind of compare. Now, what I can definitely tell you is that in my personal opinion, I loved the iPhone SE first generation. It was easily one of my most favorite iPhones Apple has ever made, and I still think in a lot of ways it is still a very interesting device. It's beautiful, it looks so great, and I do think if you are going to go through and pick up a device, this thing is a really interesting phone. But there's a big reason why I wouldn't recommend buying that one. The iPhone 16 is a legendary phone. It just came out, so it's hard to call it a legend, but it's a beautiful device. I like this one a lot too. But there are some middle devices that are probably a better value per dollar. You don't have to just only buy an iPhone 16 or iPhone SE first gen. I just want to let you know that. But we'll see how both these particular phones compare. If you want to pick up either one of these devices though, links are down in the description. You can get them from there for the cheapest prices I find, and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these particular phones, the iPhone SE first generation, which came out back in 2016, is a significantly smaller phone. I think it's one of the smallest iPhones Apple's made in a very long amount of time. You're basically getting a 4-inch Retina display on the front side of this particular device. And it's a very good looking phone. I think it still holds up very well in a lot of different ways. And if you are going to go through and pick up a device, I think this is a very nice device in a lot of ways, right? It was the smallest iPhone Apple made. It was also one of the last iPhones Apple made with a headphone jack, which is kind of interesting. And I do think in a lot of ways it is an interesting phone. The big thing to keep in mind here though, is that if you are going to go through and get a device, this thing is kind of outdated. It's an IPS panel. It has a massive amount of bezel on it, home button on the front. It is a fairly outdated display and fairly outdated everything when it kind of comes down to it. Whereas on something like an iPhone 16, this phone looks so much better than something like an iPhone SE first gen. So for starters, you're basically getting this massive display. It's a 6.1 inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. So it's a really nice looking display. I love the way it looks, and I do think it's a really nice touch if you're going to go through and get a device like this. On top of that, you're still going through and getting an OLED display, which is another really big asset for this type of phone too. You're getting, a dynamic island. It's a really nice display on this thing. The only thing that's lacking on this phone is the lack of 60 Hz or lack of 120 Hz. But even then, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. And I think this is still a really nice looking display when it kind of comes down to it. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here are the port selections. So they're both flat-sided, but the iPhone 16 is basically giving you a USB Type-C port, where the iPhone, SE first gen is giving you a Lightning port. This is, I would say, another very big difference here, because if you're going to go through and get another device, this is a really big advantage here on the iPhone 16, because USB-C is a very big deal. I love having USB-C. And that is in and of itself another big advantage for this type of device as well. On the back, you're getting a frosted glass back on the back of the iPhone 16, whereas the iPhone SE first gen is giving you this aluminum with glass backs on the top and the bottom. So that is another interesting thing going on here too. And I would definitely say that's another really big advantage for something like the iPhone SE, first generation. That it still feels like a really good device, but the 16 is definitely going to be the far better one here. But also the 16 is giving you a lot of other things too. Like one, it's giving you IP certification, it's giving you wireless charging, it's giving you MagSafe capability, it's giving you a lot of stuff on the iPhone 16 that the iPhone SE first gen just doesn't necessarily really have anymore. It's like an older device that doesn't really have it. So in my personal opinion, if you're looking at both these phones, a phone like the iPhone 16 is definitely going to be the way better one, but it's significantly more expensive, right? It's a significantly more expensive device, and that kind of makes a lot of sense why that device probably isn't going to be the, best value per dollar, but it is going to be a way better phone than the iPhone SE first gen. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here too is the camera side of things. So the iPhone SE first gen is basically only giving you a single 12 megapixel camera, which is probably still good enough for a lot of people, but it's just a single camera. Whereas on the iPhone 16, that's basically giving you a dual camera setup, a fusion lens, a wide camera, and an ultra wide camera as well. So I would probably say in a lot of ways, as you probably could imagine, a phone like the iPhone 16 is probably going to be the overall better experience in my personal opinion, right? The 16 is going to be giving you 4K at up to 60 frames per second on the front and the back. The SE first gen doesn't really have that, but also you're just going to be getting a way better type of device on the iPhone SE, on the iPhone 16 as well. The SE just doesn't really come close when it comes down to the camera side, but at a time, the iPhone SE first gen was very decent. It was a decent type of device, And I think that was a very interesting thing there, right? If you were going through and getting a phone, I really appreciated how the iPhone SE first gen was giving you that type of capability. But nowadays, it's not really even close. the iPhone 16, once again, is giving you a way better performing device here in almost every single way you can imagine than something like the iPhone SE first gen. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there for the most part as well. Now, when it comes down to some other sides of these particular phones, the iPhone 16 is basically giving you this type of capability when it comes down to, the software still being supported. The iPhone 16 is still supported with software as of this point. If you are going to go through and get a device, the fact that the 16 is still supported with software is a really big deal for me. I love being able to go through and get a phone and having it in this type of situation where it's going to be supported with software. That's a really, really big deal. So I love that in and of itself. With the iPhone SE first gen, it's basically done getting software support, and it's been done for a couple of years now. So there isn't really a big reason to go ahead and buy something like an iPhone SE first gen anymore because it's already done getting software support. Now, if this phone was still getting software support, if it was still supported, then I would kind of consider it, but because it's done getting software support, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to go and buy it, in my personal opinion. And this is another disadvantage for that type of phone. But I would still say in a lot of ways, a phone like the iPhone 16 is still very, very interesting when it kind of comes down to it as well. So in terms of that, I will say from a performance side, from a software performance side, the 16 definitely wins. But even when it comes down to the whole entire performance of these phones, the iPhone 16 wins, and it's not even really that close. The iPhone 16 is easily one of my favorite performing devices here. It has an Apple A18 chipset inside of it, and is basically going to be giving you 8GB of RAM, where the iPhone SE, first generation is giving you that Apple A9 chipset inside, and that phone is giving you 2GB of RAM. So this is another big advantage for the iPhone, 16. This is going to be one of those phones that if you're going to go ahead and buy, it is going to be a way better performing device that you can imagine than something like the iPhone 16, than something like the iPhone SE first gen. The first gen iPhone SE, like I said before, it was a very good phone when it first came out, right? It was a good phone, it was great, but it's been outdated for so many years, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to go and buy that type of phone anymore. Like I said before, you were way better off buying something like an iPhone 16, and I mean, it just doesn't even come close. I think everyone kind of knows that by now. I think the iPhone SE first gen is still somewhat interesting of a device. With that phone, you're still getting a really good device. You're still getting, for the age of that phone and everything, and still kind of, interesting. But like I said, it just isn't a good phone I'd recommend people to buy anymore. And like I said before, you are significantly better off buying something like an iPhone SE, like an iPhone 16, than an iPhone SE 1. So overall, what I can definitely tell you is that in my personal opinion, if you are going to go through and pick up a device, it makes a lot of sense to go and buy a phone like an iPhone 16. That is the way better device here. It makes a lot more sense to go and pick up that type of phone. If you are going to go through and pick up a device, please go ahead and buy a phone like that than an iPhone SE 1. But you don't only have to pick between these two phones. You can also go ahead and buy a phone like an iPhone 15, an iPhone 14, an iPhone 13, all those types of phones you can also buy as well. And that would make a lot of sense to go ahead and buy. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to go and buy something like an iPhone, 16 if you don't want to spend the money. You can buy an iPhone 14, still brand new by the brand new market by Apple, and still get a really good device too. So that kind of covers it up here for the most part. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.